I just imagined you running up those stairs, like in your house.
Oh, I was just getting the camera set up here. I haven't used StreamYard in a
Oh,
while, so
sweet.
I had to give all the approvals.
All right, what's up, everyone? I'm here with Caleb Roth, the book flipper, formerly known as the book flipper,
Yeah,
and he taught me.
legally obligated not to refer to myself as that anymore.
Okay, so don't call him that,
No,
guys.
I'm kidding. It's fine, but
And Yoda liked the post when I posted it. So
cool.
anyway, he taught me everything about selling books on Amazon. He's taught me so much about business. He used to sell seven figures in books. He's sourced books a myriad of ways, from consignment with libraries to traveling the country. Actually, what inspired me to travel in my car was you went to Tulsa, Oklahoma for one weekend with your wife, made $5,000 profit, supposedly, according to your blog,
Allegedly, no one can confirm or deny.
just going to thrift stores and libraries. And I was like, wow, even if he's lying about this, like $5,000 in a weekend, even if only a tenth of it's true, if I can just make $500 in a weekend, I would be happy. And yeah, you inspired me to get started. So for everyone that doesn't know Caleb, that's the story behind him.
Do you know
And
the
he also
difference
created,
between a mentor and a friend?
what's the difference?
Well, a friend just hangs out with you no matter what, maybe even in spite of your gunk. And a mentor sees the best in you. So a mentor sees your potential and then pulls you up towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely do that. Even the other day you were telling me on the phone, you're like, don't do that. And I'm like, all right. So yeah, we'll run some Q&A. So if you guys have questions, he created Scout IQ. I mean, he's just a great business mind in general. So when it comes to just everything, so don't be afraid to ask any types of questions. And yeah, let's run it.
Let's do it. Well, first, I've had a lot of time to ponder lately. One, being on sabbatical or mini retirement for about 15 months now. The second is I've got a 2-month-old little baby Mabel, and so I'm just trying to hold her and make sure she doesn't grow up too quickly. And I had a thought today. I was actually out pulling weeds because it's springtime here in Indiana, and Mabel was out with me in the breeze, and I was just looking over. Got a question for you, and it sounds a little weird, but why do you think people are drawn to babies? You ever thought about that? Like, I was never even a baby guy until I had my own, but you see babies and you're like, whoa.
I think it's just a natural instinct to protect.
You think it's protection?
I think it's protection, nurturing, which is kind of protection. That's what I think. What do you think?
I like that. I'm going to go. And again, I know realize we're starting off a little differently. People came to hear. Oh, there we go. Huckabee. Huckabee, side note, was my high school basketball coach. And if you want to know what it means to be disciplined and have a lot of patience, because I was no good at basketball and I was the starting point guard. And so I had no business playing ball. And Mr. Huckabee, Coach Huckabee, got to coach us. So he's getting back into books, or getting into books actually, and's been texting me. I don't know how you got my number, Scott, but I'm glad you did. And we haven't stayed in touch really since high school, which is almost 20 years ago. Not that I care to admit that. And Scott and I were able to meet for breakfast last Friday, and so that was really good to reconnect. So Scott, thanks for reconnecting. Thanks for being a good dude. Back to babies. I think everybody loves babies because they have unlimited potential. I know that sounds a little weird, but you look at a baby and that baby isn't stuck in any ruts yet. They're probably not addicted to caffeine or the internet or anything. They're just an empty slate with unlimited potential. And that's pretty cool as humans that we get to figure out how to navigate. And again, I know a lot of people are raised in tough situations and maybe it doesn't seem like the potential's there. But that was a random thought that crossed my mind today.
Yeah. What do you think Mabel's biggest potential is?
It's
like
whatever she wants.
Natural ability, maybe, which kind of goes hand in hand.
I mean, it's hard to tell personality at this point, but she is.
You're putting it on camera right now, so we can come back to this in 10 years.
Very first observations is she is strong. She came out of the womb and laid her on mom's chest, and she literally picked her head up off mom's chest and was, wanting to look around. Babies don't normally do that, so definitely strong. And her mama is incredibly strong, very strong woman, strong-willed woman too, but strong woman. And so she's definitely going to follow in those footsteps. And the other is curiosity. What's up, Miles? Miles is crushing it. You need to be having him as your mentor. I'm getting fat, old, lazy, out of the game here.
Miles is a mentee turned mentor. I'm still trying to become your mentor, Caleb.
Hey, you teach me lots of things. So strong and curious is what I see. Like even today, she's just sitting there and flipping her head from side to side, looking around. So she either sees spirits or aliens or something, or she's just trying to soak up everything she possibly can, and that's just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I always hear people say like either they're talking about their kid or their nephew, and they're like, "Oh, so and so is going to be so good at this or that," and I'm just curious how oftentimes it's how often it's true versus not true. Like, you ever watch videos of yourself when you're a baby? It's pretty trippy. Do you
Cameras
have
weren't
videos?
weren't yet created when I was a baby.
Yeah, for some reason, my family actually has a decent number of recordings. It's just funny seeing me smile at my mom and stuff when I was like 2. So like no consciousness at all. I guess I was conscious, but I just like I don't identify with that baby, like, but that was me, and it still is, and so it's just interesting. But
It's cool. Well, I see it in my son, and I realize we're not talking books, and everybody came for books, but
yeah, whatever questions y'all have
you know,
about anything, life, books,
I have a I don't know where you wanted to take this conversation, Romer. I know I've told the selling Scout IQ story. A lot of that's old hat at this point. I'm kind of getting tired of doing the rounds on that front. But we can go anywhere if you had something particular. Otherwise, I have a few thoughts.
oh
A
yeah,
small a
let's
small
let's
sermon
have
that I
you
prepared.
take this, and then I'm sure like most of the people watching this, we probably have people that know you that are coming through, and then we also have people that just recently got into business. Maybe they're still thinking this whole thing's a scam. Maybe they've sold their first book on Amazon. Maybe they're really, we got a few hustlers out there doing 10K plus a month in books. So we got a mix of people. So this guy's an expert in selling books. He's an expert entrepreneur. He's a father. He sold a SaaS company. So anything around those topics, I've traveled United States with them. And we'll just keep talking. So if you guys have any questions about anything we're talking about or want to contribute to the conversation,
Cool.
please do.
Yeah, feel free to
Take
drop
it away.
comments. We welcome and encourage rabbit trails. So please ask questions, and we'll see where this
Yeah.
conversation meanders to. I want to share just a shameless plug. We've got a podcast called Stacking Habits, and I'm going to try and petition David to change the name actually because I want to change it to Frames That Work. And this is something that I've kind of figured out as we've gotten into the podcast. So I'll just set the thesis right now, and then I'm going to share a few of my frameworks that I've discovered. Hopefully, those can help you as well. What is a framework? I mean, a framework is essentially the skeleton of a building, right? So it's something that holds up the roof. It kind of provides shape. But in general, we talk about this a lot. What are the principles? What are the best practices? What are the habits? What are the routines? What are the rhythms? We always talk about like how do we actually accomplish things as humans? And my goal with Frames That Work is frame is your worldview. It's how do you view the world? How do you make sense of the world that we live in? It's all the ideas. And then that work is who cares about the ideas unless they actually work for you? And so a big part before you can even pick a framework is to know what you want. And that's hard to know. I remember people always ask, what's your 5-year plan? And I hated that question as a college kid because I had no idea what was even possible in 5 years, much less where to go. I will say I kind of knew a direction, and Avery, you and I share the same goal in terms of freedom. I'd rather have freedom than a lot of other things. And so that was the direction. I didn't have a clear goal when I started. I met an entrepreneur this weekend who was very successful, built the largest gluten-free pizza chain or pizza company in the world. They were sold at Costco and Kroger and everywhere else. And we were working with college kids who are doing business plans and business pitch competitions. And he goes, nobody begins with the end in mind. That's like, he was like kind of borderline old man, crusty, grumpy. He's like, no one has the end in mind before they start. And that's the problem. If you don't know where you want to go, then how do you get there? And as much as I'm like, man, this guy's old and outdated. I mean, you can't argue with his success. He's done really well. But I was like, man, there's something to that clarity. So why frameworks? Well, once you know where you want to go, and for those of you that may just be kicking the tires, go, man, I don't find fulfillment in my work. I'm not super happy doing what I'm doing. There's got to be something else. There's got to be something more. There's got to be something greater. And that's what entrepreneurs are. We're constantly pursuing something better. And so if that's you, then you're one of us. Whatever we're going to talk about is going to resonate. And it's not about books. Books are great. They're a really easy entry point. But because they're easy, anybody can get into it. And we do have, for those that are pretty new or even those that are experienced, I'd say, every year the industry changes a little bit more. And right now there's a few hardships. The new inventory placement fees and getting your shipments split up for seemingly no reason. Amazon says they want to make sure that your shipments get closer to a customer. That may be true. They might just be wanting to make extra money off the fees. I saw some interesting comments on that today. Who knows? But times always change. Also, one of the largest 3 booksellers, Discover Books, just went bankrupt. At least we think. I haven't found any news on it. No one knows if Discover Books ever actually really existed. If you talk to Michael Kreider, maybe he'll be watching here as well. But Discover Books went belly up, best we can tell. They left all their bins around, and they were north of $100 million a year, and they're gone just like that in an instant from the U.S. market, and probably all markets, best we can tell. So there's some interesting times going on right now in the book space, and the point is, going back to the baby analogy, unlimited potential is a pretty cool thing. And how do you keep potential? You keep learning. How do you learn? You find new frameworks, you find new ideas, you find new people. And if you stop learning, then you fall apart and disappear. And one more note on the book industry, Barnes and Noble's education group. It's a stock I've followed for some time. I believe, don't quote me, but they bought like Chegg or some other textbook distributor, textbook company, essentially. And they're basically going belly up. So their stock finally dipped below $1, and then it dropped down to 25 cents yesterday. I didn't see what it did today, but
wow.
It's basically going to go bankrupt, and they're fighting hard to just try and salvage it. So tough time to be in education, tough time to be in books. But back to my initial point is the unlimited potential is like, get clear about what you're trying to get out of business. The goal as an entrepreneur is that the business serves us and not the other way around. Too often it's easy to just keep doing things because you see someone else do it. And I remember going to conferences, and I even went to one this weekend at Olivet Nazarene. It's a small Christian school in Illinois, and I was helping out with their pitch competition. And there's incredible, nine-figure entrepreneurs sitting around the table. Some of them maybe even closer to 10 figures, a billion. And it's just humbling to hear their stories. And, on one hand, it's kind of fun to tell my story. I had an exit, and yay, cool. But there's levels to the game, and seeing other levels, you have one of 2 reactions. You can look at that and go, BS, it's a lie, there's no way, or be jealous or envious or angry or feel like you're an idiot or you're nothing. Or you can look at that and go, oh, there's something else that's possible. Now, before you chase blindly into something else, you got to decide, do you even want that? And that's why it's important to get clear about what you're after. So something, and I'll stop talking here in a minute, but something Matthew and I talked about quite a bit is you can make money doing anything. Doesn't mean you should, but you can. And a corollary to that is there's no right way to run a business. There just isn't. There's not the one most perfect, optimal, best, most efficient anything when it comes to business. It's a matter of, what do you want from the business, and then how do you go about creating that? Once you know what you want, it's your job to then find people that have built a framework that works for them. So if you're like, hey, I want to make $10,000 a month net income after all the taxes, after everything, then there's a million ways to get there. There's probably a billion ways to get there. So the question is, how are you going to do that? Can books solve that for you? Maybe. But the point is, just get started. I always preach, if I could be a preacher, I always preach that. Just get started, start up, then figure out how to scale it, then take a moment to step back. That's kind of a mantra I've used myself, and David called me out that the other day, because we're getting ready to start maybe another idea in the software space. We're still kind of kicking tires here, and I'm starting to talk myself in circles with it. And David goes, Caleb, you always just teach others, just get started. He goes, follow your own dang advice. I'm like, dang it, David, you're exactly right. So
you're at a completely different season in your life too. You're at a season that many people hope they can get to, and that's the season of, you're retired. Like, you've made enough money to, if you're not a dumbass, never work again, or at least be pretty good for a while.
It's less about wealth and more about financial independence. And you get there by having passive income which I have a lot of investments now because I got a pile of money for selling Scout IQ. And if you set it up right, you can have passive income that exceeds your monthly burn or your
Yeah.
expenses. And if you do that, then as long as things kind of stay in that unchanging state, then you're good. And you
Hmm.
can get there. I met Justin Donald this weekend. He runs the Lifestyle Investor. Wrote a book. It's top 1% on Amazon. It's got an e-score over 151. I pulled it up on Scout IQ and showed some people. But really interesting story. He achieved financial independence when he had less than $1 million, and he's married with a daughter. And so he kind of shared his story, turned that into a mastermind and a community and a podcast. And he's brilliant. He's got amazing frameworks around
Yeah.
financial independence, and he's worth checking out.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to learn from, basically living off less than you make each year. And then on top of that, like eventually having like, is it called a nest egg? Is that what you would call it? Like a nest egg of you want 2 million in the bank, and then
Well,
through investments, you're going to be able to make passively 200,000.
let me share a framework that kind of encompasses that and something else. So back to frameworks in general. A good framework is simple. It's really easy to understand. I think we can dive into the Bible if we want, but Jesus came, and regardless of how you feel about Jesus and the Bible and God and whatever, but Jesus came in and he developed an ultimate framework. He said, look, you got all these rules in the Old Testament. You got all these principles and practices and commandments, and you guys are fine tuning all of it. He said, I'm just going to simplify it for you. Love God, love others. Like the entire law, the entire history of the Bible can be summed up in this: love God, love others. So just
Hmm.
love. And that's a very simple framework. It's easy to understand, but it's complex in that you're never going to master it. So it's
Yeah.
profound. And
Yeah.
so really good frameworks are simple, and yet they apply to lots of things. So here's another framework. Defend your margins. When we think margins, we're entrepreneurs, we go to the business world. And so what does that mean is most people make this much money, and because of credit cards, they spend more than they make. So margin means, how do you make this much money and spend less, but not just a little less, create a large margin. And the bigger that margin is, the more opportunity you have for freedom. And you can get crazy on this and get into the FIRE movement, the financially independent, retire
Yeah.
early. Joji Davenport's big into that space, and there's a lot of good principles. But having extra margin, meaning on a given month you might make 3,000 and you only spend 2, that extra 1,000 means you have room for error. Margin also applies to time. It gets really easy just to put your head down, and some of us become, entreholics. I heard that term today, entrepreneur, holic, essentially. I loved it. It's like we get so focused on the grind and the hustle. And Gary
Hmm.
Vee's great because a lot of us are lazy and we need that. And he kind of inspired that revolution. But it's not just about rolling up your sleeves and outworking the next guy. It's about doing that for as long as you have to, but then pausing every once in a while and giving yourself margin and room to reflect and step back. That's the whole step back of my
Yeah.
mantra, is step back and look and go, how am I doing? And like when I first started flipping books, we can, share some of the journey and give some practical tips too, because that's ultimately the point of this. We can hit you up all day with ideas, but if you don't put something into practice, then what are we doing? Um, when it first came to books, it's time for money. I was going to libraries, thrift stores, garage sales, colleges, you name it, but I was trading my time for money. And if that was all I succeeded and was able to quit my day job and I could still replace, again, I wasn't trying to replace income. I was making low six figures, let's call it 100 grand at work. I wasn't trying to replace 100. I was trying to replace about 50, which is what it cost to be me back then.
Hmm.
And so that number, because I had that margin, what meant that it was a much easier job to quit. And if I could work for myself, basically own my own job rather than work for somebody else, that to me was a win.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out there's levels to the game, and I eventually escaped that trajectory as well.
Yeah.
But
I guess that's kind of like a big difference between where you're at now. Like I was talking about seasons of life. Like back then you were like, let me just make 50K a year. Oh, flipping books is good for that. Now you have this opportunity for a lot of different things. With David potentially doing that software, with other things. I'm sure there's lots of different places you could put your money. And now you're probably thinking more like, do I want to do this? Is it worth my time? And it's like back then, like if somebody came to you and presented the idea of flipping books now, you'd be like, I don't really want to do it, but back then you're like, oh, 50K a year, bet.
It-
I get to work on my own, no job, bet. Like this is, and so now you're kind of like in a different season where you have a different level of choice and the freedom's already there. So now it's like, are you going to enjoy what you're doing? Maybe it's more like that.
I, when you can, those that love the process are always going to go farther than those that love the result. And
Yeah.
loving the result's okay. Again, if you go back to working out, I don't really work out. It's something I want to change because I know that I'm still young enough that I get away with it, but I have all this time and all this money. What am I doing?
You got to love the workouts.
Right. And
Side
if you don't
note,
love the
look up Sam
process,
Stolik. He is somebody
who's
did a
this?
whole breakdown of this guy's workouts, and one of the metrics he measured was, do they have fun working out? And Sam, you could obviously tell, like every set he does, he goes to failure, which sounds terrible, but he loves it. Like you can just tell he's like working out, and he's like, and like you can just tell like he loves going to Planet Fitness, his own gym. He goes to like 3 different gyms, records it in his car on the way to the gym, like just a vlog. And he's like, well, I'm going to this gym today. I love the way that the machine doesn't have that much grease in it, so it's a little bit harder. Like he just loves the whole process of working out. Whereas like there's so many guys on the internet that are like, I hate working out, like this is hell. Like, but they're huge, but they're like, workouts like the least favorite part of my day. And it's like, dude, like you're living a life that you hate. And Sam's like, let's flip that, like let's make it fun. And I try to take that approach in business, and I did take that approach. Like I had so much fun the first few years, like going to turn the page events, like drinking, meeting you, going to different cities, like getting drunk with booksellers, like in Boston, like so much fun. And there's a phrase, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And don't get me wrong, there are days where it's like you doubt yourself and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I carrying these boxes? Even now, like building go-to lister, I'm like, wow, like I have so much work to do. And some days you do have to grind through it, but if you can hold, I don't know if that's the correct word, but like definitely frame. You're saying framework a lot. It would it be a framework to hold the idea of like, let's enjoy doing this, or let's have fun. Like let me pursue activities that I enjoy in my business that have potential to scale it. Is that a framework, or is that not
For
really much?
sure. I think anything is a framework. Any book that's ever been written, at least in the nonfiction world, is a framework. Atomic Habits is a framework that James Clear used to tap
Yeah.
into habits. Five Voices, we interviewed these guys on our podcast. These are frameworks for how to understand yourself and communication in your team. Everybody finds frameworks and then they talk about it, like even startup, scale up. So to your question, is that a framework? What if it was possible to have fun? Yeah, that's a framework. It works for some people, the people that are sharing it. I think it worked for you. I've really enjoyed the process of being an entrepreneur because it's just fun. I get to be curious and follow that. So yes, it's a framework. The question is then, does it work for you, the listener? It's worked for me. It's worked for Avery. It's worked for other people. Does that work for you? It's up to you to try it on for yourself and see if it works. Because just because it is a framework doesn't mean it will work for you. But that is
Mhm.
definitely one that if you can enjoy the process, it's going to be better.
Yeah.
And again, I could want a healthy body and a six pack and muscles and whatever else, or just to feel energized and comfortable in my skin, whatever that might be. And
Yeah.
so I can love that result and work hard for it, even if I hate the process of working out. But the reality is you're never done. You never arrive. Just because you get a six pack, if you stop working at it, it's going to go away. Just because I was successful and sold a business doesn't mean I'm satisfied and fulfilled. I still want to keep growing and learning and improving as a human and as an
Hmm.
individual. And if I just put on the brakes and now I'm worried about making sure I protect my money so that I can, not worry about it,
Yeah.
then I'm going to stop living.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and I know from talking to other people that have been there, that's not a place I want to end up.
Yeah. 100%. We got Scott coming in here with a question. If you want to
That's
bang this
it.
one out real quick, we
And
talk
him
about
and I
repricing.
we've talked about this a little bit. So he hasn't signed up for his first repricer. Scott has done a phenomenal job going out. Coach Huckabee, and he called me a natural point guard, so I know he's blowing smoke at this point. Um, I understood the game of basketball. I understand the strategy. My body can't keep up with the speed of my mind. So that was always where I fell short. I think I set a record for most turnovers in a game with double digit turnovers. So that's pretty cool. And just to give people an idea, we played one of our rivals, actually a team that had Chris Kaman. He was a 7-foot guy. I didn't play against him. I was a freshman. He played in the NBA for the Clippers for a bit, but it's a blast from the past. This team, we went in, played them for homecoming. We scored the first 2 points. We had an alley-oop, almost dunked it. A buddy of mine, Adam Slusher, almost dunked it. We're up 2-0 in front of their crowd that just wants to murder us. They rattled off the next 49 points. So at halftime, we were down 49-2. And not all games were that bad. We did win 5 games in 2 years out of 40 something. So yeah, I've been in the trenches. So Scott's asking, talk about repricing philosophy that balances selling your products and getting the profits. And back to Scott real quick. He's sourced over 1,000 books. I think he's sold over 100 now. He's putting in the work. He's loving the thrill of the hunt. That's what it is for him. And now he's trying to figure out, can this meet my goals? And that's one thing I challenged him at over breakfast was, what do you want out of this? Do you want $1,000 a month profit? If so, just keep having fun, do your thing, make sure you're getting your death pile listed, make sure you have a decent repricer setting turned on, but don't stress over any of it. Just kind of get it going and let it run, because you can make $1,000 a month. Now, if he wants to make 10,000 and quit his job as a college professor, then that's a different story, and he's going to have to approach it differently. So, Scott, to answer your question,
what's 10,000?
We'll get there. We'll get there in 1 second. So how do you balance moving product and profit? Just tinker with your settings and make sure you have a scoreboard. So make sure you know what your turn rate is, what percentage of your items are selling each week. I wouldn't do it monthly. I'd do it weekly because you need more check-ins early on. And then look at your average selling price, and that's it. You can lower the average selling price and increase the velocity, but you're going to leave profit on the table. Or you can try and protect profit, but you're not going to sell very many items. And you just have to find that sweet spot. And at the end of the day, demand is undefeated. So the market's going to dictate what happens. You can get super fancy on repricing rules. That's all well and good. There's lots of great and poor pricing frameworks, but that's just a decent one to do.
Yeah.
All right. We had a second question. Oh, you can answer that one.
Not yet, but stay tuned. I can't talk about it.
Tifton Seminole had a question. What's the minimum amount
of books? How much would you have to make what's the minimum amount of books to make 10K a month?
Well, if you have 12 copies of Margin of Safety, you'd get there every month. It's $1,000 books. You'd make about 900 after fees, or 850 or whatever it is. It depends on what your average selling price is. So in general, a good average selling price for Amazon FBA booksellers is going to be in the $15 to $18 range. And on those books, you're going to net, assuming like $1 buy cost, you're going to net, call it $5. You might make 7 or 8 on some, you make 3 or 4 on others, but on average, you're probably going to net about $5. So to profit 10 grand, I'm assuming you don't care about selling 10 grand, because who cares about sales? The orange bars only mean so much. You need to sell 200 books. 2,000 books.
2,000 books.
2,000 books. It's getting late. My mind's getting fried.
Yeah. Or if you follow Josie Davenport, you could probably sell 200 books, because his average sales price is about probably 60 something. So his average profit's 33 per book. So he has to sell
300.
300, yeah.
So it just depends on what your model is, whether you're doing online arbitrage. That's a great example. And Joji, welcome to the house. Good to have you here. Yeah, if you're going to sell cheaper books, you got to sell a lot more of them. So a good rule of thumb is you probably sell 20% of your inventory a month as an FBA seller, kind of on an average month, some lower, some higher. Again, it depends on your repricing, depends on what you're finding. So you need to have an inventory of 10,000 books to sell 2,000 in a month to profit 10 grand.
Yeah.
Which that's a lot of books. Now you can get there if your ASP drifts higher. ASP is average selling price. If that gets up closer to 20 or a little over 20, then you might be netting, $10 to $12 per book. And so now if you're getting $10 per book, you only need an inventory of 5,000. Because you're selling 20% or 1,000. So it just depends.
Yep. And Joji made 10K a month last year with books. I think, or maybe not quite 10K. He made 100K profit last year. And then his partner, Victor Galejos, made 155K profit. And they recommend just buy 10 books a day. And he's buying them for 17, selling them for 68. So just find the inventory. Find the inventory. However you can, whether it's Amazon to Amazon flips, eBay to Amazon flips, thrift stores. I mean, we've been at places where we found $10,000 profit in a day. It's not very common, but closeouts, liquidation type deals, pallets of textbooks. Just gotta find the inventory. Scott liked the story.
Scott, I didn't realize they had a new campus. I drove by, I hung out with Jake. We went to the driving range after, and they had a brand new campus. I don't remember that one. So I think Cayman must have given back to the school because they had a pile of cash to go do that.
Let's see what else we got here.
What other questions, people?
Yeah, whatever questions you guys have,
Frameworks,
drop them below.
Habits, books, just getting started.
Well, there's probably bad frameworks too, right?
Framework is
I
one
think
that's
like maybe a competitive framework could serve you in some areas, but then it could like in other areas a competitive framework, because if you're always comparing yourself to someone else, I've realized this, when I first met you 6 years ago, I had like nobody to compare myself to, and everyone I compared myself to was like light years ahead of me. But now that I'm so involved with the community, I see kids just starting out and I compare myself to them, and I'm like, oh, I should have as many views as them on Instagram, or I should have as many sales on Amazon, or I should have, and like, so now I have so many more people within my, I guess, realm of competence in my eyes that I think I should compare myself to. Oh, this guy's stupider than me, and he's younger than me, and he's a wrestler. I should be selling more than him. That's Taylor Jones, like Taylor Jones pops up, and I'm like, he pops up on my TikTok, and I'm like, I should be doing better than this guy because he's exactly like me, my same age. Whereas like when I first started, I was looking at people like light years ahead of me. And so like I think as you come up as an adult, you have a competitive mind frame or framework, whatever, there's 100 different people to compare yourself to. And it can be really good. I think it's served me really well in a lot of ways. But I also think at a certain level, it can, if you're always comparing yourself to people, you're never going to be the best at everything. You can be pretty good at a couple of things, but you're never going to be the singular best person at everything you do, like jiu-jitsu, dancing, business. You know what I mean? Like, well, and if that's your framework for happiness, then you're screwed.
So to your point, I'm going to pick at something, and it's a word you just said about 4 or 5 times there. It's should. Comparison is the thief of joy. And that's not just written by someone that's a loser and can't compete. That's exactly what you're describing. It's really easy to go to conferences and see someone else doing something really cool and go, wow, that's shiny. Oh my gosh, they're crushing it. Heck, I'm smarter than them, or I have more money than them, or I have more connections, or whatever you want to tell yourself. And it's easy to go chase that and say, well, I should be doing that too. You see all the new programs come out, and people are doing the video reviews for the affiliate program for Amazon. And there's people like Trevin Peterson and Matthew Osborne that are just crushing it. And you see that and go, man, that's easy money. I should be doing that.
Yep.
Well, maybe, but it goes back to, what do you want? Get clear about what you want. And if that fits what you want, great. If like you enjoy that, if the world needs it, if it makes money, if you're having fun, like whatever frameworks matter to you, go ahead and do it. But otherwise, kind of stay in your lane. One of the things I did with books is I made the intention to go very deep. The longer you do something, here's another framework. The longer you do something, the more the exponential the reward gets. So the greater the reward. You can do something for 5 years, but year 6, you might do more than you did in all of years 1 through 5 together because of your experience.
Gotcha,
and so the longer you do something, the more connected you are, the better you understand it, the better you're going to do at it. Now, I reinvented myself. I went from trading my time for money in thrift stores to hiring scouts to realizing I didn't like managing people to doing a little bit of bulk, but never really. I kind of realized the consignment thing was, how do I get people to scan books for me, i.e. libraries, thrift stores, and send me only the good books so I don't have to throw 80% of the books away or recycle them, because that's what happens when you do bulk. And so how do I get pallets of acceptable books, like good books that meet my criteria, coming to me? And how do I partner with those organizations so that I actually have real customers, not some nameless click on Amazon that I don't get to know anything about because, say, Amazon, I'm a widget. And that became consignment. So I reinvented myself there. Then I reinvented myself again, going to a library sale in Denver, looking over the room, going, man, there's 40. Well, there's probably 10. I'm exaggerating. 10 other booksellers here,
Feels like
all
40. Feels
all
like
fighting
400.
for books. 40, sure. And I realized, okay, I can fight with them, and maybe I can scan a little faster or go to just the right section because my spider sense tells me where to go. I might get 5% of the books instead of my fair 2.5% if there's actually 40 sellers. Or what if I served all the sellers that are using the app and I made the app and I made it better because there's weaknesses in what was out there? And that was kind of the light bulb, the aha moment of, wait a second, like my version of capitalism, the old version of capitalism is Adam Smith's invisible hand, which is everybody does what's best for them in their own interests. We're all very selfish and self-oriented, and we'll just do what's right for us. And ultimately it kind of all works out in the greater scheme of the economy. I don't buy into that scheme. I look at it, whoever serves the most people wins the most.
Yeah.
So creating an app, did I just want to not compete with other sellers at book sales and make money just sitting at home in my pajamas? Kind of. But really, I wanted to make a better tool that had better data that served people better. And we executed on that. We built a cool team and had a lot of fun doing it. And as a result, we won. We got to make a lot of money, but we only did that because we helped a lot of other people be successful.
Yep. Yeah, I have a lot of different ways I could go there. There's a Tony Robbins phrase: do more for the community, for the people, than anyone else will, and you'll get paid like out of, at proportion to that. You know, even something as simple as just bringing coffee to a library and giving it to the staff, you're providing value in that sense. And then it's just crazy how much they'll give you in return for just a little favor like that. I used to feel so weird doing that. Reezy said do it like years ago. I always felt like I was bribing them, but I just did it the other day here in Nashville, and they were just so nice. And I didn't have cash on me, and they just let me leave with the books. They said, "Oh, pay us next time," and I was like, "All right." And so
there's a difference. If you bring them the coffee, I've heard of people doing this on airplanes, like on international flights. They'll bring a Starbucks gift card or an actual Starbucks coffee on the plane, hand it to the flight attendant or flight attendants. And what they're hoping is that they'll get an upgrade if there's an empty seat in business or first class or whatever.
They can smell it.
Intention they can smell it. If you come in there and you're only being just nice enough and a fake smile, hoping to get an upgrade, they can tell.
Yeah.
If you change your posture and it's genuine, hey, thanks for taking care of us on this long flight. I know it's probably not a fun job and you don't get thanked very often. I see you. I care about you. Here's a coffee. And then go sit down. And you might get something out of it. You might not, but you just saw another human and helped another human. And that in itself is a reward.
I love the phrase intention has a smell. And there's also a phrase from the Bible or a line in the Bible that says you should only give out of the kindness of your heart, which I embody that. I'm at Starbucks. I'm like, I feel weird right now. Oh, wait, should I get the library some coffee? I'm like, would I feel good about giving them coffee? Do I want oh yeah, I want them to have coffee. And so I'm like, all right, let me do it. But if it was just like a weird, like if I just had this weird energy where I'm like, give me the books. I give them the coffee. I'm like, give me the books, guys. Like they're gonna feel it 100%. But it was like, it felt great doing it. And I'm like, wow, I should probably have done this more often. Like giving gifts feels great. Be cool. Speaking of repricing, they took us out to dinner at Miami Sellers Conference and they gave us gifts and it didn't feel super weird. It was like, this is really nice, And so there's an art to gift giving for sure. But
yeah, some of it, like I went and met some cool entrepreneurs over the last few days here. And I brought, do you know what a dot card is?
Mm-mm.
It's just like a business card. I think I got one in my pocket. It's just a business card. Looks like a credit card. And I think it uses NFC technology. It could be RFID. I think it's NFC. It's just looks like a little networking card, and it's got a QR code in the back. But it just says dot. All you do is you hold it to your phone, and it pops up, and it's got a cool website that basically has my contact info,
nice
phone number, tells about myself.
I've had somebody do that to me before, actually.
They're really cool. So actually, I bought a bunch of them to give away as gifts, and I still have a few. And I just brought 3 of them to the conference, and I met some cool people and was like, hey, I want you to have this. And they cost $20. It's not a huge deal, but I gave them and there was no expectation. I kind of joked like, hey, I'm giving you this like cheap thing that's fun. Hopefully you have fun with it. and someday I'll call in a favor back because I'm on your good side now, But that was just a joke. I don't really care. And so if you
Mhm.
can do that and just be curious about stuff, that's infectious and it wears off on people.
We can watch this again in 10 years together because there's already some interesting content that you had. So I'll make a note to watch this in 10 years with you. Where do you think you'll be in 10 years actually?
Oh gosh.
Like actually, like you're gonna watch this in 10 years. I'm gonna pull it up at your
All right,
house
so
or
I'm
whatever.
36. In 10 years, almost. So I got remarried. I've got four step girls. They're 13 to 7. So in 10 years, the youngest will be 17, almost out of the house. She'll be a junior high
Isn't that
school.
crazy?
So 3 of the kids will be out of the house. My son will be
Hey, Mabel's the
16.
youngest. 10 years, she'll just be 10.
Mabel will just be 10. So we could be gearing up to move because once the kids are out of the house and into college, we could move. Mabel will be middle school, and that wouldn't be too hard, I don't think, to move at that point. So I would hopefully we're considering. I don't know. I don't want to say that
Yeah,
because
you
maybe
you have no
Indiana's
idea. You're thinking
maybe
more
Indiana's my
family.
home.
I'm thinking like everything. Like, I mean, you don't have to be too specific, but you could have. That's a whole season of business. Like, you could have built a whole new business and exited it. Um, you could get obsessed with golfing. You could. I don't
Well,
know.
this goes back to potential. The potential is for me to do any number of things.
Yeah,
And that's the beauty. It can also be paralyzing because it's like, well, I want to pick the next thing because flipping books was a way for me to quit my 9 to 5 job. I had a corporate job working for Johnson and Johnson. Flipping books, I never set about back to that crusty old guy we referenced at the beginning. I never set out to build software and sell
yeah,
it and exit and be financially independent at age 30, on my 35th birthday. It was a
yeah,
gift. That wasn't the goal. I just took little steps in front of me. And so I had a 5-year career in orthopedics. I had now a 7-year career. Flipping books turned into 7 years. And I love the outcome. I never dreamed this would have happened. So hopefully in 10 years, I've done maybe 2 more careers. I love doing things in 5 to 7 year increments.
yeah, yeah. I think that's completely possible. It'll be just be interesting. It'll be interesting. Like, I feel like we're still like 6 years ago wasn't that long ago. I still watch those videos from me when I first started. I'm like, man, like I'm a changed man. Like I am different. And it's already kind of trippy. And I can't imagine like 15, 20 years to look back. And so now I'm kind of realizing like, it's really trippy, and also, when we're 80, we'll be able to watch all these videos of ourselves.
Assuming
And
YouTube is still around.
yeah, it will be. The videos will be. And like somebody could download all this and make AI out of us. Like so when we die, like at our funeral, they could literally just have like me and you talking since we've talked so much on YouTube together and have like semi-realistic things of what we've said to each other. Like it's crazy. But anyway, um, let's see. We got a few questions in here. Brian's asking, is there a quicker way to get ungated than checking each book on Seller Central? If you use GoToLister, it'll queue all your books that you're restricted in, and then you can click on apply. It automatically opens Seller Central and pastes the ASIN. Made that for my mom last year because she was gated in every book. How much will the new low inventory fee affect FBA? It shouldn't affect booksellers too much because they want you to keep one item in stock, or they want you to have at least a 30-day supply of items. And oftentimes one book is enough to reach that requirement. So one book equals a 30-day supply. Do you know anything about
Amazon
that, Caleb?
said, and I'm going off of Jen Middleton because she knows everything.
Yeah.
So she did the homework. She said it does not apply to books, at least I'm citing my source. So
Okay.
if it does apply to books if you have multiple, but if you just list one book and send it in and then you sell it,
Okay.
you don't have to delete the listing. That's kind of a myth, and you're also going to be just fine if you just have one. What they're
Okay.
trying to do is if you're selling widgets and sell 50 and you've got an inventory of 1,000 and it's going to take you 20 months to sell out of them. Sorry, that's not what Amazon's after. They're going to charge you storage fees to fix that issue. If you are selling 1,000 a month and you're down to 50, then I think they're going to hit you and
Yeah.
say, hey, we need you to have inventory because otherwise, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
it doesn't apply to
Exactly.
books.
Can you get an approximate average cost for getting started selling books? I mean, you can get started with no software at all. Use the Amazon Seller app, go out, scan, get books for free. I mean, really, the only thing you would pay for is inbound shipping. So theoretically, you could start for nothing
I think for
minus
the
the amount.
Amazon seller app to work, you'd need to get the pro Amazon subscription, which would be $39.99.
Really?
I believe so. I don't know if you can scan things without it. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while.
I think you can. I
Okay.
think to use third-party apps, you need the pro account.
That okay,
That that
that
might be
sounds
what
right.
you're thinking. I think you actually could, but theoretically, like if you do want to invest in the softwares, we recommend $100. Scout IQ, Go-To Lister. They both have free trials, so you're looking at $100 software cost, probably a couple hundred in inventory cost. You'll be cash flow negative for like 6 weeks, and then after 2-3 months, you'll never be cash
Yeah, it
flow
depends on
negative.
how fast you go. So back, my high school basketball coach, bought 1,000 books, probably an
Yeah,
average cost of $1.50, let's call it. So that's $1,500 of outlay, and I don't know that he's received any of that back. Maybe a little bit of it as he's starting to sell.
yeah,
Amazon also kind of holds your deposits on reserve. They don't just give you the money back as you're ramping up, because that's kind of a red flag, and they want to make sure you're not
yeah,
screwing customers. So it does take a bit to dig out of that, but you can work with whatever you have. It'd be nice. I think you can make do on $250 if you were absolutely on a shoestring budget.
yeah,
If you had 1,000 to $2,000 to throw at this, it's probably a little easier to kind of make a few mistakes and get going.
yeah. 100%. Marcy said she handed out Starbucks gift cards at the library sale after she paid for the books. So good
That's a
on
nice
you,
touch.
Marcy. Oh, nice. How did the library sale go, Marcy? She just started selling books and she hit her first. She was scared to go to the library sale, and I was like, do it. A lot of people that I
Oh,
talk to are scared to because it's like so
I
competitive.
I used to be scared to go even to a thrift store because I wondered what's the store going to think, what are people going to say,
Yeah.
and I always wanted other people to come with me because I didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So for those of you out there scanning, you either don't care what people think, which I'm envious, or you are very bold, and I'm also envious. So
Yeah.
it takes a lot
Says,
to care
says the
enough to put
man who
yourself
made an
out there.
app that sounds like a casino when you're in the book section.
Woohoo!
Fun. It is kind of funny. Like, it's cha-ching, 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 and the thrift store owner is like, the heck is going on over there?
Yeah. As you're all getting excited.
Caleb's the godfather of books, says Jeremy the entrepreneur.
Thanks, Jeremy.
She says it was great. I'll show you guys at the next book meeting.
Well,
Feed the
hopefully you don't
Beast meeting,
show
y'all.
us the books, Marcy. Hopefully they're listed and sold by then.
Yeah, hopefully.
But you can send
Starthumble.com.
pictures.
Starthumble.com/beast if y'all want to come to our live meetings. We do them once a week, every Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern time. So,
And for those starting your journey, document it. It doesn't have to be on social media. You don't need to brag, but take some pictures. Have a little note section and remember the first thing. So Scott texted me like 2 days ago and goes, "Hey, I just hit the century mark in terms of units sold. I sold 100 books." That's awesome. Scott, write that down, put the date, write what you felt, write what you thought you
yeah,
could accomplish. It's so much fun to go back and look and go, man, I remember when I remember my first $100 day. I
yeah,
remember vividly my first $1,000 day. I was riding a bike with my friend Sean, and I kept like pausing the bike ride to bring my seller app up and refresh it and see if I got there, because it was textbook season. And I remember $1,000 in a day seemed absolutely bonkers. So yeah, document things and go back and just remind yourself how far you've come.
yeah. It's pretty crazy. I'm on my YouTube right now. It's like, especially on video, like it might be painful to record yourself. You might not want to watch it the same day, but like, guys, look at this. I recorded all this, and nobody watched my YouTube videos back then. Had like 10 views per video. Check this out. Like, I'm outside my friend's house, sleeping in the car. I didn't post these, I didn't even post these videos on YouTube because I was ashamed. I didn't post this video on YouTube till weeks after. Like, because I was like, who's gonna watch this?
Well, I know Gary Vee talks about it, and Miles has been really good at encouraging other people to just document their journey. And we talked about this yesterday, Avery. There's new sellers coming out that are just crushing it with content.
Yeah. The thing I do like about this content though, versus like, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And so when I'm 80 years old and I watch this with my grandkids, like I'm gonna pull up a video like that because I'm like, oh, I'm not putting it on the front. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to teach anything. Not that anything's wrong with that. Like that's all the videos I make now are like teaching how to sell on Amazon. I know how to provide the value. But back then I was just like, hey, let me like document this, and like true documentation is what you'll watch in the future, I think. Um, if we're thinking long term. And that's what I was thinking of because I watched so much Gary Vee back then. I was like, I'm gonna watch all this when I'm 80. That's always been my vision. So um yeah, anyway, let's get back
And
to
if you're just starting out with the content as well, you're not going to be an expert. And that's one thing that people will smell as well. Again, they'll smell your intention. If your goal is
yeah,
to build an audience and make money off sponsorships or affiliates or whatever, people kind of sense that and they can tell.
yeah,
So one of the nice parts when you're starting out and you don't know much, right? You're still got, deer in the headlights look. Just share your experience. Share
yeah,
what you're hoping to learn and just put it out there and just
yeah,
come from a position of humility and curiosity, and that's going to
yeah.
take you really, really far.
Yeah, you have no idea what could come from content. Like how many people you'll meet, how many people you'll inspire. Like look at yourself as a little star. And even if you never post any content, you're still a little star and you're going to influence everyone in your life. Your family and friends and whoever. I don't know who's got family and friends that do this to them because mine never did, but I've heard people have family and friends that make fun of them for starting a business. That never happened to me, but I can tell you what, once my business started taking off, I definitely inspired a ton of people around me to think bigger. And I see them do things that they wouldn't have done otherwise. Maybe they started a business. Like even my sister here, she's a interior designer and she started her own business. And who knows, maybe me starting my business 6 years ago, having the balls to go and say, hey, I'm going to fucking do this. I think that influenced her for sure. And I think it influenced my cousins. I think it influenced friends near me. And I know for a fact all my friends influenced me. You influenced me. And so don't think that nobody's going to see it. Like when you post on social media, a lot of people are watching. Even if 2 people like your post, probably 14 people saw it. And even if it's just for yourself when you're 80, you'll be able to go back and see it. But I guess my point is like this is entrepreneurship. It takes balls, it takes courage, and a lot of people don't have that. And so just by you showing, even if you don't have the results yet, just by showing the courage to believe in yourself, you give other people that courage. So
Well, again,
it's
that's the
beautiful.
framework. You found something that works for you. You sort of owe it to the people around you, to the world, to share it and see if it works for somebody else. And the better the framework, and by better, I mean simpler yet profound. If you've kind of unlocked truth or found truth that works, you owe it to share it. And that can spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And the more true something is, like why do some people blow up like Alex Hormozy or somebody, I don't want to say Grant Cardone, but Ryan Moran with capitalism.com is getting a really good momentum. He's found something to be true. He proved it in his own business, built and scaled a business and sold it. And now he's helping other entrepreneurs do the same thing. That's a
Yeah.
framework. And so the better Ryan gets at describing that and sharing that and serving other people, the bigger he's going to grow. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful. So he's just sharing his framework. Here's how
Yeah.
to, he wrote a book on it, 12 months to $1 million. Cheesy sounding book, really good content. So
Yeah.
whether his framework serves 10 entrepreneurs
Is that the
or
blue
10,
book? It's blue looking.
I think it's black and blue.
Yeah, I think I know
Gary
which one
V
you mean.
wrote one of the like reviews of it, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Good book.
Left turn. Can you speak about inbound shipping fees and strategy to deal with it? It's less about the increased inbound shipping fees. Nothing you can do about that. More about the split shipments. So there's like 3 different ways to deal with splits now. It's like either you pay for the least amount of splits or it progressively gives you more splits. I personally recommend just deal with the splits and use go-to-list or box content flow. So if you
I would
instead
say
of
the
listing 50 books, list 150, and then hopefully, you get 3 splits with boxes that are big enough to fill up um, with the books. What are you about to say?
I would say what you can do to deal with it is raise your minimum profit. So if you're sourcing
Yeah,
books right now and your floor profit is $2, raise it up to 250 or 3. You're
yeah,
going to buy fewer books. You won't feel as successful if you're playing games like we used to teach the 100 book challenge in a week.
yeah,
You might not get your 100, you might only get 75, but you're going to be getting better books. And so the 80/20 rule, the Pareto principle that says 80% of your results or your profits come from 20% of your inputs, which is the books you list, then what if you just found those 20% of books? And that doesn't quite apply in books, but it's pretty darn close. So list fewer books, list better books, aim for more profit, more margin. See some of the earlier points we talked about, and that will play well. Then there's tactical things. What do you do? And that's where the software and GoToLister and those come into play.
Yeah. Yeah. So usually you get a few splits, and I say just get used to dealing with splits. Don't let it screw up your workflow. Somebody's asking about an account shutdown issue. I think I saw 2 people in here.
I think it's the same person. So
Okay.
Texas girly looks like, or girl.
What I'm recommending everyone do, because they've had success with a bookseller who had their account shut down for an inauthentic claim last year. Appeal Assassins, they're pretty good. I see him running ads all the time. I've talked to the guy. So this is personally who I recommend. Riverbend did a piss poor job with me, and so did Jeff Schick. Not anything wrong with them. I think they do good when it comes to online arbitrage or wholesale, but when it comes to booksellers, this is a person I've known that has done well so far. So if you guys choose to use them, let me know if it works out.
Well, again, Texas girly is in search of a framework. She knows what she wants. She wants her account back. Now it's her job to find people that have solved that exact problem. And so, Avery, you've tried, you've had some success, and I know you've had a few accounts kind of get popped in and out. But that's why she's asking. So those are great things. Hopefully the Assassins page you mentioned can help her out.
Yeah, Appeal Assassins. They seem pretty good. They seem legit. But
so that's worth a shot. And then also ask here if anybody knows of a service that's worked for them or worked for their cousin Vinny. Yeah. You can drop that as well. And that's where sellers are going to be really kind. This community is very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, ask around in the Facebook groups too. There's tons of Facebook groups dedicated to account shutdowns, but make sure whoever you hire has dealt with used books before. Because,
exactly. Make sure they've solved your problem.
Yeah. So appreciate you coming on, brother. Let's see. Here's a question. What % of revenue should a bookseller devote to new ventures or legs of the operation? Say a person who cherry picks wants to get into OA, I'm thinking like 10%. What's your opinion on that?
Well, again, depends on what you want. So if you are kind of ramping up and books are your gateway drug of choice to get into flipping anything or being an entrepreneur, then you kind of want to put your head down, do the hustle, do the grind, and make sure you build up some cash reserves. Once you have some cash reserves, that allows you to start playing some bigger games, and you have a few reps under the hood. You know how Amazon works. You know how to deal with shipments. Now you can start applying your skills to bigger and better things. Does that turn into online arbitrage? That seems like that's your next step. So how much should you allocate? Well, as much as possible. Again, if you can keep your margins high, meaning you keep your monthly costs low, and I'm not saying pinch pennies and don't pay for the lattes unless that's really where you're at in life, in which case that's fine. But make sure you step back and try to play some bigger games from time to time. And so, yeah, I would say 10% is nice. It's kind of the question, what % of your income should you save? And more is better. So, 10 is great, 15 is better, 20 is awesome. If you could save 50% or set aside 50% of your net profit to put into the next venture, that's all the better. But I'd say some is better than none. So if you're doing nothing right now, even allocating 5% of your dollars, and I would argue 5% of your time to do more research and try to find better uses that you can do, that's going to be a good investment. And when you can put things on autopilot and get them to where they're scaled and running without you, that frees up even more of your time that you can then figure out where to put more of your time and attention.
100%. Thank you so much for coming on. For everyone watching, if you guys can real quick, do me a favor. And for everyone watching the replay too, if you want to head on over to Stacking Habits, let's blow up this podcast a little bit. It's 100% free, and Caleb just gave away a ton of knowledge for free. So if you guys want to thank him for that, go ahead and subscribe to his podcast here. And it's him. It's basically the past owners of Scout IQ are running a podcast just talking about entrepreneurship, obviously stacking habits, frameworks, things like that. Just a really cool podcast to put on while you're scanning books or listing books. So I recommend you go check that out. You got anything to say about that?
Yeah, if you're looking for new ideas, that's our goal. We're going to follow our curiosity. Our criteria is we're trying to find intentional. That's really our biggest word, is intentional guests that are having an impact. And so you have ideas, and frameworks and idea and whatnot, and then you're just seeking those out. So we're going to share things from how to sleep better to how to be more efficient with your time to morning
Yeah.
routines. We're going to talk
They
about
already have.
everything.
They have a ton of episodes. Go listen to them, and they've interviewed like really big authors. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're
So
hopefully just getting started, but yeah, we're
yeah,
trying to find cool ideas, and then how do you implement those? Because ideas without action, frankly, are meaningless. So
yeah.
that's why the habits and putting things into practice matters.
And then one update. This is a brand new feature. Dom, my developer and partner with GoToLister, always yells at me. He's like, I spend months coding these things and you never talk about them. Like you make one video and then it's over. So we have an inventory valuation report now. So if you guys click on inventory, you can see how much inventory you have available, the sales value of it, and then how much inventory is on the way to Amazon. So total inbound to Amazon. You can see total unfulfillable. This is like including returns and stuff. And if you toggle to the right, you can see how much money's tied up. So I have $38,000 inbound to Amazon of my inventory cost. So this is my buy cost. It knows my buy cost because I use GoToLister to list the products, and it just tallies it up. And so I know I have 10 grand at Amazon right now in my money tied up. 38,000's on the way. And if you toggle over to the right one more time, you can see how much profit that is. So I have 15,000 profit at Amazon that should sell in the next 2 or 3 weeks because I'm doing wholesale, and then 22,000 inbound. So super cool. We had somebody on Feed the Beast call the other night. She has $35,000 worth of inventory at Amazon, and that's 2,000 books. So it's pretty cool. Like for me, I like to see, like, how much money do I have? Like this is kind of part of your net worth in a sense. So go check it out. Inventory tab for all my GoToLister people.
Looking
All
good,
right.
brother. All right.
Sweet. All right, man. Peace out. Have a good night.